There he goes. 1, 2, 3. Going in up Baja. There he goes. Very nice.
Hello everybody, it's Matsimus and thank you so much for joining me on today's video. Hope you're having a good day, and if not, maybe this video will entertain you enough to keep a smile on your face. So the F-16 Fighting Falcon. Most of you who are watching this video should already know what this jet is. If you don't, I would suggest you do some research. But basically, it is one of the most formidable fighter jets of the United States Air Force and one of the most dominating multi-role fighters out there. It's been around for quite some time, but really, I want to today talk about how truly capable this jet is and how still, to this day, it is extremely powerful, being one of the best fighter jets in the world. Now, specifically, I want to discuss why certain countries should still potentially fear this fighter jet in its airspace. For instance, Russia and China should still be respecting this jet enough to know that it is a formidable asset and not something that should be taken lightly. The F-16 Falcon bears an unusual distinction. It is one of the only top jet fighters in the world to also be very cost efficient. It's extremely fast, very agile, and the light fighter though does have some shortcomings in range and payload compared to the larger twin-engine fighters like the F-15 Eagle. But that was easy to forgive due to costing less than half as much, around $80 million in 1999 and $27 million in 2017. This favourable bang-for-buck ratio has not been lost on air forces around the world. The F-16 currently remains the most popular aircraft in modern military service, out of around 4,500 produced. Nearly 2,700 remain currently in service in around 26 countries, and that is really impressive for an air platform. Needless to say, the cutting-edge 4th-generation fighter of the 1980s will remain with us for a good while longer, and I, personally, am very glad to see that happening. The F-16 was born out of the conundrum experienced by the Air Force in the Vietnam War. Fast and heavy F-4 Phantom fighters had underperformed against the North Vietnamese Air Force due to their immature long-range missile technology and lack of aptitude for tight maneuvering in dogfights. This led to a faction known as the Fighter Mafia to argue that the Air Force had its design priorities all wrong, and that what was really needed was a relatively cheap, lightweight airframe that maximized energy for short-range dogfights, rather than another heavy twin-engine fighter like the F-15 Eagle that was under development at the same sort of time. Support for a light fighter eventually consolidated in the Pentagon. Due to a simple economic plan, the Air Force liked the F-15 but realized it was too expensive to equip all of its fighter squadrons, so it came to seek a high-low force mix. Eventually, two prototypes faced off in the competitive trial in 1974. The Northrop YF-17 and the General Dynamics YF-16. The latter were unanimously found to be the most responsive, and while the former evolved into the Hornet fighters now serving in the Marines and the US Navy. The first production F-16As went into service in the 1980s, joined by the two-seat F-16B variant. The single-engine F-16 leveraged on the new design technologies available to maximize its performance. A powerful Pratt & Whitney F-100 engine with the intake slung under the fuselage could generate an excellent thrust-to-waist ratio due to the overall lightness of the Falcon, propelling her to twice the speed of sound at high altitude. The F-16 had a very prominent, and what we all come to know now as the bulging bubble canopy afforded for the excellent field of view for the pilot, who was lounged in a seat at around angles of 30 degrees so that it could mitigate the G-forces from violent maneuvers. The F-16 could pull off very violent maneuvers indeed, becoming the first jet fighter able to pull 9 Gs in a turn, tighter than any other US fighter until the F-22 Raptor came to be. This is exactly why this jet has been put in service with the US Air Force's Thunderbirds aerobatics team. In fact, to maximize its maneuverability, the F-16 was intentionally designed to be aerodynamically unstable, a deficit which its flight control systems automatically compensated for, just like the gorgeous Eurofighter Typhoon. This was all feasible due to the F-16's then revolutionary fly-by-wire control scheme, which basically meant that the pilot's controls were interpreted via an electronic interface instead of via hydraulic or cable-connected manual controls. Not only were the fly-by-wire controls more reliable, but they made it more possible for the flight computer to correct the pilot's maneuvers as necessary to avoid exceeding the Falcon's tolerances. Another feature was the integrated throttle in the joystick, known as the hands-on throttle and stick, or HOTAS, enabling a much smoother operation by the pilot. Fly-by-wire and HOTAS have since become the standard features in nearly all modern combat aircraft. Unlike the earlier model F-14 and F-15s, the Falcon was also designed as a multi-role fighter, and this is one of the biggest attributes for this jet. It could lug up to 17,000 pounds of munitions or electronic warfare gear on its 11 hardpoints, including a new generation of precision-guided weapons such as Maverick missiles and larger laser-guided bombs. The jet also had a 20mm Vulcan cannon located inside of the aircraft to serve as a backup weapon system. Ironically, while the fighter mafia had little faith in guided missile technology, the F-16 arrived just when such weapons attained a new level of efficiency, and the Falcon's APG-66 Doppler radar, heads-up display and targeting computers were all able to leverage these weapons to extremely deadly effect. This was demonstrated in June 1982 when Israeli F-15Ss and F-16As engaged in a massive 3-day air battle of the Beqir Valley against Syrian jet fighters. The Israeli Falcons downed 44 Syrian MiG-21s and 23s without suffering a single loss. A year earlier in 1981, the Falcons had demonstrated their versatility when 8 of the brand new fighters bombed the reactor in Baghdad with 16 2,000-pound Mark 84 bombs, bringing Saddam Hussein's nuclear program to a very abrupt halt. By the mid-1980s, the currently serving F-16C and 2CD models entered service. These boasted modernized avionics such as liquid crystal displays and the new APG-68 radars that allowed for long-range missile engagements with the newer AIM-7 Sparrow and forthcoming AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles. The C and D have since undergone several more incremental upgrades, including better radars, GPS-targeted weapon capabilities, and the integration of the AIM-9X Sidewinder heat-seeking missile, which the pilot can target using a helmet-mounted cueing system, permitting the F-16 to shoot at an enemy within visual range without having to line them up directly in front of its nose. The US F-16 fleet first saw action in 1991 in the Gulf War, where it flew more than 13,000 strike missions loaded down with 2,000-pound bombs and Maverick missiles. The F-16s embarked on the largest airstrike ever. Interestingly enough, the Air Force actually attempted to boost the F-16 as a replacement for the A-10 Thunderbolt in the close air support role by equipping the F-16Cs and Ds of the 138th Fighter Squadron with the Pave Claw 30mm Gatling gun cannon pods. However, the lightweight jets were so shaken up by the weapon's recoil that the idea was quickly abandoned, and the A-10 fleet survived yet another of many assassination attempts by the US Air Force brass. After the formal end of hostilities, the F-16s enforcing the no-fly zone over Iraq scored the first kill using a long-range AIM-120 Scorpion missile when they downed a speedy MiG-25 Foxbat. Since the Gulf War, the Falcon has been very good within the US and NATO Air Force campaigns over the former Yugoslavia, Iraq and Syria. American and Belgian F-16s shot down an additional enemy fighters over Serbia and Kosovo during the 1990s, though 2 were brought down by Serb surface-to-air missiles. The F-16s sold abroad have also seen plenty of actions in conflicts. Pakistani F-16s shot down 10 Soviet and Afghan aircraft on its border during the 1980s. In 1992, 2 Venezuelan Falcon pilots played a key role in defeating a coup by supporters of the Hugo Chavez by shooting down 2 rebel OV-10 Broncos and a Tucano trainer. By one count, the Falcon has shot down 76 enemy aircraft, while only suffering 1 or 2 losses in aerial combat, generally under the strange circumstances. A Pakistani F-16 shot down by another accident, a Greek Mirage, downed a Turkish F-16, in which was formerly known to have been a mock aerial combat. And of course, Falcons have continued to serve as the bomb-toting workhorses for many air forces around the world, for airstrikes on targets in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Libya. Otherwise, there's also been the very common and up-to-date conflicts with Afghanistan and Pakistan that they're still being used on today. The most sophisticated F-16 in service today aren't in the US Air Force unit, but rather the Block 62 F-16Es and Fs ordered by the United Arab Emirates. The new F-16s boast bigger fuel tanks that greatly extend the Falcon's short range at minimal aerodynamic cost, as well as an APG-80 active electronically scanned array radar. AESA radars represent the cutting edge of fighter-borne radar technology due to their superior resolution and lower visibility to enemy radars. Currently, an even more advanced Block 70 version is being considered for the production in India. However, the costs for these new Falcons have also skyrocketed. Due to the delays and cost overruns in the F-35 stealth fighter program, the US Air Force intends to continue flying its 1,200 F-16s well into the 2040s by extending the airframe's service life from 8 to 12,000 hours. The Fighting Falcon has proven to be a fine and versatile combat jet, and furthermore, by one count, it costs $22,000 per flight hour to operate, compared to $42,000 for a twin-engine F-15. If the agile little fighter has any shortcomings, it's that the American F-16's radar has fallen out of date, and that type was never designed to carry a great deal of fuel, limiting it to its combat radius to around 340 miles on internal stores. The Pentagon should eventually consider reasonable measures to keep the fleet up to date, notably the incorporation of the APG-83 AESA radar and the adoption of conformal fuel tanks. These issues aside though guys, the F-16 has more than earned its reputation as the most current and most popular nickname among pilots as the Viper, and will continue to occupy a prominent role in the military aviation across the globe for decades to come. So as I mentioned guys, I have a huge respect for this fighter jet, and really for the fact that these aircraft are still rolling today isn't due to the fact that it's a budgetary requirement, it's because they bloody work. They do their job as necessary and they are able to keep up with every task thrown at them. The multi-role task of the F-16 has really been its staple. It's the fact that it can go into a bombing role, it can carry such heavy payloads, it is extremely agile, very lightweight, able to get into dogfights, very capable of air-to-air engagements. It just is an all-round fantastic fighter jet, and I really do feel that those who underestimate this jet may have a bit of a short surprise for them. It's interesting to see that the United States has not yet really fully updated this jet to stay in with more modern standard fighter jets that are out there, but you've got to remember they are focusing more on their more up-to-date modern fighter jets such as the F-35 and F-22. The F-16, in my personal opinion, is one of those stopgap jets, very similar to what the Canadian government's doing right now with the Hornets or the Super Hornets. It's a jet that can really fill all the gaps that other air superiority fighters cannot fulfill. You know, the F-22 Raptor is not going to be carrying, 6 bunches of, cluster bomb weapon systems ready to go, because they're just not designed for that. It's an air superiority fighter, it's there for air-to-air, but the F-16 is still able to fulfill that role, and honestly, I absolutely love this jet. Now, I know that this aircraft is not the stealth technology integrated fighter like the F-22 and the F-35, but honestly, I don't really feel that it's necessary to have an entire fleet of stealth aircraft. Stealth, to me, is highly overrated. I don't know enough about it to really make an opinion on it, but honestly, when it comes down to it, there's always going to be something that can counter stealth technology. This aircraft has proved itself very worthwhile in environments where it doesn't require stealth, and that's where I think its niche is. That's where it's utilized the most and the best, is in an airspace where it doesn't need to really worry about stealth so much. It just needs to put as much firepower down as possible, or just engage aircraft that really have no real deterrent against stealth technology. It doesn't require stealth technology, and it's just a very powerful workhorse for the United States Air Force, and honestly for air forces around the world. I mean, look how many are out there. It's an incredible amount of aircraft and airframes that are still rolling, and a really impressive flight per hour ratio to operate on. $22,000 per flight hour, although extremely expensive still, it's still pretty good compared to some of the other more modern fighter jets out there, and I think that's why the US government is saying, you know what? No, we ain't getting rid of this thing because it's still very capable, very agile, very formidable in terms of engaging other targets, fighters and ground targets. So they're going to keep it rolling until 2040. I mean, that's a long time away, guys. So I don't think we're going to see this thing go for a long time yet. And honestly, I'm really happy about that. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Just give you a bit of a rundown of what the F-16 is all about and why it's going to continue servicing through until the 2040s. And let me know about your opinions on this jet. You know, I love this jet, and maybe I'm a little biased, but it does have an extremely impressive service history, one of which I think earned its respect and place in the Hall of Fame for the United States Air Force and other air forces around the world. Leave me a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your opinion on it and about this video. If you wish to support my channel, I would love it if you could go check out my Patreon account. It is in the description box below for the link. And if you ever want to come have a chat with me or play some games with me or just discuss, you know, about this aircraft or other videos I've done in the past, feel free to come check out my Discord channel. Once again, the link is in the description box below. Discord is basically a chat room on which you can, you know, host chats, both text and voice, and just hang around and play games and chat the shit, really. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thanks again for watching. All the best. Bye bye.